Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So this hadith is the fourth hadith in the 40 Nawawi hadith. And this hadith can be, for many people, can be a very confusing issue because of a number of topics that it talks about. Number one, let me explain the hadith. Let me explain first the hadith. And Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. And Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is the fourth, or some scholars say the sixth to become Muslim. The reason to that is that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud was this young man that was a shepherd for one chieftain or one major rich person. And Abdullah ibn Mas'ud happens to be taking care of the sheep. So Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, there he is. The Prophet ﷺ was running away along with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq away from Quraysh in the prosecution. So they find Abdullah ibn Mas'ud along with his sheep, and they said, can you give us some milk? So Abdullah ibn Mas'ud responds that he doesn't own this sheep. All right. So the Prophet ﷺ says, okay, why don't you get me one that doesn't produce its own milk? So he gets him one. And then the Prophet ﷺ wipes over its back and its milk glands, and right instantly the milk glands puff. So Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is watching. He's this young, short, and skinny man or young boy, is around 14, 16 years of age. And then he tells the Prophet ﷺ, when he says this, he says, teach me how to do this. So Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, the Prophet ﷺ realizes he's a smart boy, and he says that you are going to be an educated man. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud then becomes Muslim, and at the time there were only 4 others or 3 others that were Muslim at the time. That was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Sayyidah Khadija, Ali ibn Abi Talib, the Prophet ﷺ, and was Abu Dhar al-Ghafari first, or was Abdullah ibn Mas'ud first? Differences of opinions between scholars. Was he the 6th? Was he the 4th? Was he the 5th? Regardless. Now, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, just an idea also, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud actually became one of the most important people to be the ones to write the Quran. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, not only was he writing the Quran, but he was also one of the people to be the main scholars amongst the Sahaba. And because he was amongst the main scholars, amongst the Sahaba, the Prophet ﷺ sends him by himself in Iraq area in order to be the main teacher there. All right. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, of course, learns a lot about Islam because the Prophet ﷺ, remember, he was the 4th to become Muslim. So he had definitely seen a lot more. So this is before Umar ibn al-Khattab, this is before all the other Sahaba, and he was from the very, very early ones to become Muslim. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, because of his tiny body, he was really skinny, really short, and a dark guy, from Yemen. At one point he was, climbing up the tree, and then he falls, and then they started laughing at how skinny and how small his ankles were. So the Prophet ﷺ says that his ankle on Judgment Day is going to be heavier than the mountain of Uhud. This is the Prophet ﷺ's witness that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is one of the most important Sahaba. So he says, radiyallahu an, meaning may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him. He says, حدثنا Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, while the Prophet sallallahu of course they were sitting with the Prophet sallallahu, the Prophet sallallahu had told them. Now imagine, you guys, this is Abdullah ibn Mas'ud saying the Prophet sallallahu told us. وهو الصادق المصدوق. وهو الصادق المصدوق is basically part of the narration of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. He said, وهو الصادق المصدوق. And he is the one that is he's trustworthy, and he's the one that I trust. As-Sadiq al-Masduq, and in fact, he's the most one that we put trust in. Inna ahadakum. Inna ahadakum. Inna means verily. Ahadakum means that each and every single one of us. Yujma'u meaning that there's a combination. There's something that is being combined here. and combined, meaning the cells, the sperm, the egg, etc. يجمع خلقه, meaning his creation, all put together. في بطن أمه, in his mom's womb. In his mom's womb. 40 يوما نطفة, for 40 days, this person is a nutfa. Nutfa simply means that it's a very small, it's a very small sperm. It's a very small collection of cells. ثم يكون علقة مثل ذلك. Then he becomes like a leash, like a leash. It's a kind of an insect. It becomes like a leash. ثم يكون مضغة مثل ذلك. Then he becomes a mudgha. A mudgha is simply like a chewed piece of gum or a chewed piece of food. Then later he becomes a mudgha. So we're looking at stage 1. He was a nutfa. For stage 1, he was like a sperm and an egg. So basically a fertilized sperm and egg. Then more like a leash. Then after so the first 40 days, it's like a alaqa, like a nutfa. The second 40 days, he's like a mudgha, alaqa. And the third 40 days, he's like a chewed piece of food. All right? So what are we looking at? 40 plus 40 plus 40, 120. 120, not yet is he necessarily a complete human with a soul. Now we're going into stage 4. ثم يرسل إليه الملك. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends the angel. When? In stage 100, after 120 days. Then the angel is sent, and then he blows in him the soul, or her. Blows the ruh, the soul. And that angel is ordered to write 4 words. 4 words. 1. Arba'a kalimat doesn't necessarily mean literally 4 words, but 4 things that relate to this. 1. بِكَتْبِ رِزْقِهِ. بِكَتْبِ رِزْقِهِ, meaning all the things that he's going to get, whether it's money, whether it's children, whether it's home, house, car, whatever it is, all the things that relate to what income and what cherishes and blessings he's going to get. وَأَجَلِهِ, and how long they're going to live. وَعَمَلِهِ, and the action that they're going to do. Is it shaqi? Is it going to be that this person is a naughty person? Or is this a happy person? Not shaqi to mean sad, but shaqi to mean that they're not going to be good people. And sa'id would mean that they're going to be happy as a metaphor to mean that they're going to be people of piety. فَوَاللَّهِ الَّذِي, and by Allah, the one that there is no God, there's no God but Him. Inna ahadakum, all of you, inna ahadakum, each of you may do an action. Let me just wipe that one. Inna ahadakum la ya'malu bi'amali ahli al-Jannah. That some of you may do the action of ahli al-Jannah, of the people of Jannah. حتى ما يكون بينه وبينها إلا ذراع. To the point that there's no distance between him and Jannah except an arm distance. This is ذراع, an arm distance. فيسبق عليه الكتاب. Then the book that was written about him, which is the book that was mentioned here, the book that was written about him, which is what the angel had sent, is going to actually be implemented. فَيَعْمَلُ بِعَمَلِ أَهْلِ النَّارِ. He ends up doing the action of the people of hellfire and enters it. وَإِنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ, and one of you, may do the action of the people of Ahlin Nar, the people of hellfire, to the point that there is no distance between them and hellfire except an arm distance. فَيَسْبِقُ عَلَيْهِ الْكِتَابِ, and what was revealed in the book, فَيَسْبِقُ عَلَيْهِ الْكِتَابِ فَيَسْبِقُ عَلَيْهِ الْكِتَابِ فَيَعْمَلُ بِعَمَلِ أَهْلِ النَّارِ. Then what that book contained happens, and then they will end up doing the actions of the people of Ahlul Jannah. فَيَدْخُلُهَا, and he will enter it. Several questions. Of course, if you're looking at the words literally, you would think, wait a minute, so therefore we've got no free will, it's all destined, I've got nothing to do, and the malaika had already ordained and had already decided, they wrote everything, so am I doing anything after all? Right? That's the question, right? Why am I doing anything after all if that is the case? And it becomes an issue, or a number of these things become an issue of confusion. Let me just explain. Of course, that's one. The other confusion is, okay, if in case, for example, abortion, does that mean they're human at 120? What is it then? And of course, when we look at nutfa, so that means they're not human, are they subhuman? And the actions, are we taking the decision in our actions, or is it, that's it, it's been ordained, you've got no choice, and we're going to end up either in Jannah or not, no matter what we do, and therefore, no matter what we do, it's just the last minutes of our life that's going to decide our action, and therefore we could either enter Jannah or hellfire. Is that the case? Lots of, let me say, confusion, that if we don't read the hadith right and we don't understand it, and if we don't put it in place, we might get into more questions than answers, right, Amaya? More questions. So let me explain each and every single one of them. Let's start from the very beginning. Number one is that إِنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ يُجْمَعُ خَلْقُهُ. Scholars actually had different opinions when we say يُجْمَعُ خَلْقُهُ. The word خَلْقُهُ right here, here's the word خَلْقُهُ. خَلْقُهُ, from this word, some scholars like al-Madhhab al-Shafi'i regarded that this is talking about your creation, meaning that it doesn't mean that your creation starts at 120. All right, that's when the ruh has been blown, but they said that doesn't mean that your creation starts at 120. The other scholar said that no, your creation started from early stage, from the time when yujma'u khalquhu, from the time of the egg and the sperm meet, and then here's the beginning of the beginning of the creation of a human being. They said this is the beginning, but in cases where there is a necessity, abortion can be an option only if it's in the stage before blowing the soul. Abortion would be in cases only when there's a necessity such as danger on mother's life, a necessity such as danger on the child's life. Those would be some kind of necessities, not, oh, he's an unwanted child and just abort the baby. Now, when we actually say the stage of nutfa and the stage of alaqa and the stage of mudgha and how it looks, remember that there is actually a scholar, his name is Keith Moore, and he's actually an embryologist, and he wrote a book on those different stages, how the Quran and the Prophet ﷺ actually talked about it and talked about those stages before even the modern science and what it discovered about the different stages and what it looks like, etc. Regardless, I don't want to go into that. But when we want to look at, like I said, the arba'ina yawman, generally abortion in Islam is haram, period, only if there is a necessity, meaning danger on a mother's life or the child's life is the only time when it would be considered as as the not necessarily as halal, but it would be considered the lesser evil.
In anything.
No. After 120 days, no whatsoever, unless there is danger on mother's life. After 120 days, all right? Very strict, because it would be regarded as a total human, just like you would see a baby on the street. After 120 days, because this baby now has a soul. The soul doesn't start, the person doesn't start being considered alive when they're out of the mother's womb, but they're considered alive when they're inside their mother's womb after the age of 120 days of conception. Now, a number of things here. So why is it, for example, all these abortion or anti-abortion people, what makes something ethical and what makes it not ethical? Well, the reason why you're looking, for example, the Democrats or the liberals or whatever, or the feminists right now calling for all those abortion and women's rights and in having an abortion, etc., is simply because those organizations, those groups, those lobbies, whatever you want to call them, they actually stand from a very secular standpoint, which considers that the one that defines ethics is not necessarily a religion or whatever people would regard as ethical or not, but they would consider that it's my emotions. So my emotions would be the epistemological standpoint to consider if this is acceptable or not acceptable. If we say this is acceptable, that would actually mean you're regarding that the emotions are the ones to regard how I feel. I feel that I need to move on in my life. I should be the standpoint of regarding if this is okay or not. And then it becomes ethical just because there's a lobbying pressure and lobby pressures to decide what is ethical or not. But in Islam, you as a human, you are created anyway, so you're not the one that decides if something is ethical or not, because you are yourself a creature, and you yourself are actually supposed to be implementing a principle. So you can't be the person to determine a principle, because you as a human, you have a combination of your own anger, your own lack of data about human and the creation of life and etc. And of course, humans themselves actually have their conflict of interests, that they can no way be the ones to actually define ethics and principles. So that's why when we look at in Islam, the difference between Islam and the secularity is that in Islam it regards that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of the worlds, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one to define principle, versus in secularism, no, it's not essence preceding life, or principle preceding life, or purpose preceding life. It's actually life, and then people make up their own essence. People design the purpose. People design their principle, and that becomes the existentialism that people are living in. Now, when we look at this hadith, ثم يرسل إليه الملك, ثم يرسل إليه الملك, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends the angel. When we say sends the angel, does the woman feel the angel? Just like there are angels right now around you, do you necessarily feel them? Now, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the angel Jibril alayhi salam did used to come in the image of Dihya al-Kalbi. Dihya was one of the Sahaba, and Dihya was the image that the Malaika used to come in. Now, here's a question. Can we say that Zainab is an angel? Why can't we believe she's an angel? She's human. Well, Dihya al-Kalbi is a human, but Jibreel alayhi salam came in the image of Dihya al-Kalbi. How do we know? How do we know she's not an angel? She bleeds? She bleeds?
How do you know?
You guys, look at her. What does she have in her hand? She's got a drink. Malaika. How did Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, when Prophet Ibrahim, the Malaika came, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam was very generous. What did he do? Right away, when he got these visitors, right away, he went to a sheep, slaughtered it, and baked it and everything, and cut it and cooked it and everything. فَقَرَّبَهُ إِلَيْهِمْ قَالَ أَلَا تَأْكُلُونَ. So he just put the food in front of them, and he realized they weren't eating. He said, don't you guys want to eat? فَأَوْجَسَ مِنْهُمْ خِيفَةً. He felt scared. Something's different about these people. Why don't you guys want to eat? What's up? What happened? فَأَوْجَسَ مِنْهُمْ خِيفَةً. What did they tell him? They told him that we are your Lord's messengers. What happened? We're here to bring you important news. Your wife is going to get pregnant. With who? With Prophet Ismail alayhi salam. Now Prophet Ibrahim is looking, he's like, how's that? I'm an old man and my wife is an old barren. How is that going to happen? فَصَكَّتْ وَجَهَا وَقَالَتْ. She slapped her face and she was like, how could that happen? Now, the angels respond. They said, your Lord is able to do everything. We're just here telling you. Now, Prophet Ibrahim ﷺ is now making a conversation with the Malaika. And then he talks to them. What about Prophet Lut? They were like, we're going to deal with Qawm Lut. We know who's there, and your Lord knows who's there. But you've got certain things. Here's what you're going to do. Here's a mission, etc. Basically, giving them the whole plan. Now, how did he know they were Malaika? They didn't eat. He was scared. He got scared.
Could there be Malaika like now?
There could be Malaika, of course.
In a human form.
In a human form. In a human form, they would only come as a karama. As a karama, what is a karama? A karama basically happens to the salihin. To the salihin. So for example, a karama, a malaika come, and it's supposed to be very private. It's supposed to be very private. No, I did not see a malaika. She was asking if I saw malaika. It would only be a karama. A karama meaning a miracle that happens to the salihin. Oh, Maryam, are you awake? So it would only happen to a salihin. And the salihin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may give them different karamat, may give them different miracles. The different miracle could be, just like for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as in hadith in Sahih Muslim, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually sent a malak, sent an angel to ask a man. He said, where are you going? Oh, I'm going to visit my friend in such and such land. Why are you going? Because because I love him for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends the angel in a form of human. And he says, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent me to tell you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you because you love him for the sake of Allah. Jameel. Beautiful. This is the malaika in a form of human telling him. This is a message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, this happened. So this hadith is actually in Sahih Muslim. Yes, long time ago. فَيَنْفُخُ فِيهِ الروح meaning blows the soul in him. وَيُؤْمَرُ بِأَرْبَعِ كَلِمَاتٍ. And then يُؤْمَرُ بِأَرْبَعِ كَلِمَاتٍ. And then he's ordered 4 words. But the word kalima in Lugha Arabiya, in Arabic, may be meaning literally 4 words, and may also mean 4 issues. When we say 4 issues. So let's see. بِكَتْبِ رِزْقِهِ. But here's a question. When we say 4 issues that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destined, what does that mean? that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not live within the dimension of time. You live within the dimension of time, but that's why to you, you would only know what's going to happen tomorrow because you live within the perimeter of history, time. You can't know what's going to happen in the future, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the past and the future the same. Why? In the same knowledge, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not live within time. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to him, the future and the past is all the same. He's got the knowledge of the past and the future. So why write rizqihi? Rizqihi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is writing and ordering the malaika to write each and every single person. Now, if every single one of us had, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had foreknown what this person is going to do, why are we being tested? We're being tested because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most just. He will not consider you or hold you or punish you unless you actually take the action. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not hold you accountable because He is most just based on His knowledge. But He wants evidence for you to prove it to you that you decided to do this. Now that's why, so do we have free will or do we not have free will? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the malaika to write this, not to mean to make it happen to you with no free will. If there was no free will, there would be no such thing as a test. The test is because you have free will, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had foreknowledge about what kind of decisions you're going to make. So it was written, these are the decisions you're going to make. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows them about you. And so forth you continue. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you the free will to choose. Today, I got a phone call. This girl says that she doesn't believe in Islam anymore. I don't know why she called the Islamic hotline if she doesn't, but that's okay. That's actually good. It tells you that she's got good in her. But she says she doesn't believe in Islam anymore because she says she doesn't understand why she went through a certain trauma in her life and the person that caused this harm to her still exists. Why didn't God intervene and stop this man from causing the harm? A very common question. Number one, I said, so the harm that was caused, was it necessarily something that the man had done, or was it God Almighty? She said, it was the man. I said, all right. So you wanted God Almighty to intervene and to stop this man from doing this harm? She said, the least. To stop this man from doing the harm. I said, all right, move on. And she said, well, I did the dua and I wanted God Almighty to take revenge from this guy and he's still happy. How old are you? At 21. Okay. So you're 21. Let me ask you a question. If there was a child and he felt that there was some harm that was done unto him or her, should God intervene or not? She said, well, child is too young. I said, okay, child is too young. So God shouldn't intervene for a child? She said, well, he's too young. I said, okay, so you're too old? I said, I'm 40. So should I consider you young or old? You saw as 20 and you thought, well, somebody that's young doesn't deserve a God intervention. But somebody in their 20s deserves so. But if somebody in their 40, you might actually think a 20-year-old is too young. Who decides when God should intervene. When should God intervene? That's question number one. Question number two, how much evil requires God's intervention? Is it a young girl being raped somewhere in the forest? Or is it when you just didn't study, but that was going to cause a lot of trauma if you had failed the class? So you expect God's intervention to let you know all the information and write it down on the test. Or if we didn't actually have any pain. Now, this is something really important. There's a book, it's called The Gift of Pain. And when you say the gift of pain, is there such a thing as a gift of pain? Is there? Are you sure?
Yeah, because
without pain, you would not know that intervention is needed. And that's the same thing in the world around you. God Almighty had given you pain to know that something needs to be done. You would not have doctors if we didn't have diseases. We would not have any civilization if we did not have any challenges. And that's the same thing. The different harm that is done around us, that is done by people, is a result of their free will, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not leave these people without being held accountable for their action. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives free will, but that doesn't mean that that free will is just going to be without any accountability to that free will. So she said, but it still didn't answer my question. I said, all right, let's look at the atheist view. The atheist view regards that you don't have free will and that you are just matter in motion and it's just a bunch of different things that are deciding your action. Here's why. Because if they would have said that there is such a thing as a will, that would actually mean that there is something other than the matter that lives. فاهم علي خالة ميرفت؟ يعني ايش؟ خليني اشرح لك اياها بالعربي. في هناك المادة. إذا كانت هناك المادة، هل هناك شيء خارج المادة؟ الويل اللي هي الإرادة. الإرادة خارج المادة. فلذلك الملاحدة لا يعترفون بالإرادة. قالوا لا، ما فيش إرادة. لأنها خارج المادة. Matter in motion. So the atheists don't consider that you have free will. And that's why when you discuss a free will with an atheist, that's when they don't know how to answer it. They'll say, no, there's no such thing as free will. Why? Because that's outside of matter. Once you say will, that would actually mean you're discussing something outside of matter. That's when the atheist argument would actually start shaking. But that's why if a person that is an atheist says, well, there's no free will, it's just matter in motion, that would actually mean that whatever depression and whatever evil thing happens to you, you've got no solution but give up. But give up. You know why? Because to the atheist concept and to the atheist philosophy, if we look at it, I'm not talking about a person, I'm talking about the atheist philosophy in itself. Not somebody that's trying to make a philosophy out of it. A lot of atheists don't know what atheism actually means. In the atheist philosophy, to actually say matter in motion and that there's no free will actually means the bad thing, the evil thing happened to you. There's no hope in life. Just live in nihilism because everything is anyways just matter in motion. Feelings, nothing. No such thing as feelings. You just feel that way, but you're just a bunch of matter in motion. So when we talk about, for example, for an atheist, it just simply means there's no hope in life. There's no justice. There's no hope. There's no meaning to life. And even the evil stuff that's going to happen, well, it's just some evil stuff anyways. But in Islam, it's the total opposite. In Islam, no. Free will, it doesn't stay without being held accountable. It's put within the area that this person has free will, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them free will because they are being tested. This world actually had a purpose to it, just as the different things, those little pieces, had purposes to them. Life at large has a purpose to it. This purpose is that you're being tested. How are you going to implement justice on 3 grounds? On the body level, on the body materialistic level, meaning individual, and also the individual, and also the larger point, which is when we're talking about individual, we're looking at a wider one, community. Number 2, which is your mind. Your mind, the tool as an intellect to help you understand the world around you. Why am I created? What is afterlife? This tool is to help you understand. Number 3, at your soul. Are you trying to elevate yourself beyond the materialistic life around you? Or are you getting, now here's one thing. You have, when you decompose, when you die, what do you become? The soil and the dust. You decompose. Now, question number 2. Any matter, in other words, part of you is indeed matter. There's no doubt about that. A part of you is matter. But here's one thing. If I take a ball, hit the ball, why did it move? Because of the momentum that was put in it. It started having energy. The ball now has energy. The energy made momentum. The momentum pushes back. If you don't let this momentum be held, the momentum will continue finding its way in you. What momentum is in you? The momentum that is in you goes into different ways. 1, hunger. 2, desire for reproduction. 3, desire for drinking. 4, desire for world and life and fame. All these different things, they become this momentum inside of you that if you do not hold it to a balanced level, it will try to go out in different ways. If you don't balance your reproduction, your sexuality into halal, it will definitely not go into LGBT, but it will go farther and farther, and it will continue till it kills you. Food, if you don't balance your food, it's going to want more and more and more. And guess what? It will not stop, not even at 4 and not 500 pounds either. Sugar, it continues until it kills you. Now, when we say momentum, this momentum is simply shahwat. The momentum that is causing all this is really all those different things that we use as lust, desire in the Quran, in the Quranic term. This desire and this lust will continue trying to take you far. But here's one thing. You've got the gravity in you, which is that momentum, and you also have the matter, which is your body. Now, if you look at all this and the dynamics of these put together, now when we look at it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually tells you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created created within you الروح ويسألونك عن الروح قل الروح من أمر ربي. The soul is just an issue that is one of the secrets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the secrets of Allah, you're never going to get there. But because it's one of those, for people that are studying physics, biology, science, etc., always the issue of ruh, nobody discusses it. Why? Because there's no way that they can get any information about it. It's one of the secrets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they decided to totally not talk about it as if it doesn't exist, because there's no way that they can get any information about it. And of course, they can't feel it, they can't sense it, but they do see a person was there, now is dead. But why? How do we understand that? So where do they go? What makes this person alive from the very beginning? Just matter in motion. Don't think about it. Now, when we look at the hadith, before that, the issue of evil. Now, in Islam, is that these things that are within you, you're given the free will. Sorry, I went off. When you're given the free will, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you these different gravities, these different desires, but they can take you wild unless you balance them. And at the same time, those that balance them are basically the ones that are sa'id, the ones that are going to be pious, the ones that are going to be balanced, the ones that are going to be the mu'mineen. They don't let the principle off limit, but they let the principle guide their actions and their desires and their will. The ones that their will matches the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the mu'mineen. What does that mean? Meaning that they see what is haqq as haqq. They practice it. What is evil is evil. And they so see it and they so implement it. Now, when we look at these things around us, this is just to give us an idea. How do we put this information together in order to get an idea of what it means? Oh, you guys can't see the laptop. What it means to put this information together. How does it affect us? Sorry about that. I'm not sure what's happening with this. Did they turn off? I'm not sure what happened. Okay, here we go. Now, to continue. Go. Okay. بِكَتْبِ رِزْقِهِ وَأَجَلِهِ. Let's continue right here. بِكَتْبِ رِزْقِهِ. Rizq, like I said, all the details. But here's a question. Can any of this information be changed? Yes. Dua. Dua can change the will. What is will? Will is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had foreknown that this was going to be your will. But anyways, your will alone cannot change everything. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that allows it to happen, because remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created all the patterns around you anyways. Okay, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was the one that created all the patterns around you, and you are part of the pattern. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you that inner will that does not go outside of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wills, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the pattern around you anyways. You live within the pattern. You live within Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. Just as when we look at a knife, the knife cuts. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had created the pattern of knife cutting. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed that the knife would not cut during during that Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, and when his attempt to slaughter his own son, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stopped the will of that nature of cutting. Now, بِكَتْبِ رِزْقِهِ وَأَجَلِهِ. أجله, okay. بِكَتْبِ رِزْقِهِ وَأَجَلِهِ. أجله, the lifespan. How long are they going to live? How long are they going to live? Can that also be changed? Yes. يلا يا ماما هلا منكم. Even that can be changed. وَأَجَلِهِ, meaning the time span. And that's why, can I make dua to live a long life? Yes, you can make a dua to live a long life. But when you want to make a dua to live a long life, remember to always make the dua of long life and piety with it. Now, amalihi, the action. What are you going to decide? What steps are you going to decide in life? All these different things. وَشَقِيٌّ أَوْ سَعِيدٌ. Shaqi is giving you a metaphor right here. That the person that decides to take the steps other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's, other than the steps that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had permitted, is going to live in sadness, is going to live in sorrow. Meaning, if the person decides to go off the limits and transgress the limits that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him, and that's why on Judgment Day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually tells us that on Judgment Day, that people are going to be combined. And part of those people, they're going to be combined and actually resurrected blind. Why? And they would say, قَالَ رَبِّ لِمَ حَشَرْتَنِي أَعْمَى وَقَدْ كُنْتُ بَصِيرًا. He would say, why are you resurrecting me blind when I was a seeing person? He said, because you had seen the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you did not believe in them. قال كذلك أتتك آياتنا فنسيتها. فنسيتها, it doesn't necessarily mean you forgot it. It doesn't necessarily mean you forgot it. But it means that you ignored it. You ignored it to the point that it became not visible to you. You became so numb from seeing it. You saw the trees, you saw the skies, you saw the world, you saw that there was life and there was death, you saw that there were people born, you saw the miracles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَنَسِيتَهَا. Nasitaha, not forgot it, but you became so numb you didn't even realize it. You were just so busy with your materialistic life that you did not even want to see it. You just totally ignored it. Became totally blind from seeing it. Ya Allah. And this happens today. People are seeing all those miracles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you see, and I said this last week, a Hindu, an astronaut Hindu, yet worships a cow. Didn't even see the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the miracles and in all that universe. He's an astronaut, saw something even greater than a cow, but still continues to worship a cow. Who?
Like someone who is blind and listen?
It can be. It can be. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us one of those. And if you actually look at the beginning of the ayah, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا. And whoever stays away from dhikri, what is dhikr? Dhikr meaning remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not only in dhikr to mean Quran, or in dhikr to mean subhanallah walhamdulillah to mean that dhikr, but also in dhikr can also mean visual dhikr, to realize the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oral dhikr, to do reading, to remember the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the behavioral dhikr, which is applying the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into action. And that's the behavioral dhikr. So the person, أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِ, أَعْرَضَ, meaning that they turned their backs on what? Turned their backs on the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, turned their backs from seeing the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with their eyes, and turning their backs from implementing, by seeing the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by implementing the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a dhikr. Now here, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِ فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا. Danka is shaqi. Danka is shaqi. الضنك الحياة الضنك, if you say the word ضنك, if you feel the words ضنك, you feel that it's going into like a barrier each and every single time you say one part of a syllables from that word. And that's exactly what it means. A dhanak is a life of emptiness, a life where you're hitting one wall after another. This is a dhanak. When you hit a wall after another, and when you feel that life of emptiness, this is a shaqi. This is a shaqi. What is a shaqi? Shaqi, they're naughty, they're feeling emptiness, they're sorrow, they're sad, they're sad, they're going into depression. And that's why what usually happens for many girls when they actually, let's say they graduate, or they get married, or they go into or have a child, etc., or their child gets married, etc., they go into a moment of depression. Why? Because they forget between the tool and the goal. Their mind is so focused that this is the goal that they forget that the goal is Jannah, that this world is just a test. And that's why when we look at shaqi, what is shaqi? Shaqi, when they didn't realize that they are living in a span, in an axis between time and their existence is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually behind the purpose of their existence, that they're living within two parameters. Now, in order to say Sa'id, when we say Sa'id, it's a metaphor that they're happy. But Sa'id, a metaphor that they're happy to mean another word, which is they are pious. Because the one that is a mu'min, لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. الخوف is the opposite of الاستقرار. الخوف, when you're not scared, you're feeling الرضا. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the mu'mineen radiyallahu anhum wa radu an, that they're content over their Lord, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is content over them. But what is content? Content is feeling a balance. Content is feeling a balance, an inner feeling. You're feeling a balance. This balance is making you not feel the sadness and the depression and all those different psychological feelings that we're getting today. فَوَاللَّهِ الَّذِي لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُ لَا إِلَهَ غَيْرُهُ. And by Allah, the one that there's no God worthy of worship but Him. إِنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ, one of you may do the action of the people of Ahlil Jannah. In another narration, the Prophet ﷺ actually says as to what it seems to people. In other words, this person was doing the action of Ahlil Jannah to what it seems to people that they're doing the action of Ahlil Jannah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really knows the true intention. You can't judge anybody that they're really good or not, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that knows the true intention. All you see is the outside, but the outside is not enough to let the person enter Jannah. Because the Prophet ﷺ in another hadith, he actually says, أَلَا وَإِنَّ فِي الْجَسَدِ لَمُضْغَةً. There's a piece of flesh in the body. If that piece of flesh is good, then the rest of the body acts in accordance with that goodness and piety, and it becomes good. إِنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ لَا يَعْمَلُ بِعَمَلِ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ. One may actually do the action of the people of Ahlil Jannah. They would do the action of the people of Ahlil Jannah as to what it seems to people, to the point that there would be no distance between them and Ahlil Jannah. To the point that there would be no distance between them and Ahlil Jannah except an arm distance. But فَيَسْبِقُ عَلَيْهِ الْكِتَابِ. فَيَسْبِقُ عَلَيْهِ الْكِتَابِ, meaning what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had foreknown about this person becomes apparent. The reality of their inside becomes apparent. And then, right before they die, a month, 2 months before they die, a year, the reality of what they are and their true essence becomes apparent, and they'll start doing the action of the people of hellfire. and they will enter hellfire. On the other hand, a person that may do the action of the people of Ahl al-Nar, a person that may do the action and the action of the people of Ahl al-Nar as to what appears to people. You see that person not necessarily doing the pious things, but that's what it appears to you. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what He had willed, what He had known about their intention will become apparent, and then they eventually start doing the action of the people of Ahl al-Jannah, the people of Ahl al-Jannah, and they will enter Jannah. Now this hadith is actually an authentic hadith. It was actually narrated by both Bukhari and Muslim, which means it's the highest level of hadith, the highest level of authentic hadith to being both authentic. 8:11. We'll see you guys inshallah next week. Any questions before we end? No? All right, good. Alhamdulillah. Everything's clear.